Hello, this is Deborah Roberts, collage artist, visual artist, here today with Ricky Day on the podcast, Nothing to Lose But Yourself.
My guest on the podcast today is Deborah Roberts. Deborah is a mixed media artist whose work challenges the notion of ideal beauty. Her work has been exhibited internationally across the United States and Europe. Roberts is in the collections of the Whitney Museum of American Art here in New York, the Brooklyn Museum, the Studio Museum in Harlem, LACMA, that's LA County Museum of Art for those of you who don't know, the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts in Richmond, Virginia, the Blanton Museum of Art in Austin, Texas, among other institutions. She was selected to participate in the Robert Rauschenberg residency in 2019, and she is a recipient of the Anonymous Was a Woman grant in 2018, as well as the Pollock Krasner Foundation grant in 2016. She received her MFA from Syracuse University in New York, and she currently lives and works in Austin, Texas. I am so happy to welcome to the podcast the illustrious Miss Deborah Roberts. Hey, Deborah, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. It really, really is. I love your work, as I shared in our pre-call, and I've been excited about the opportunity to speak to you. So I'm really excited to be here with you today. And what a day to have you. On the day, I don't usually tell people this because they don't know when we're recording versus when the episode comes out, but we happen to be recording on the day that Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed as the first African-American female on the Supreme Court. What a blessing to have that happen today and have you as my guest.
Right. That's a glorious thing. I mean, all the little girls right now can look up to her and to say, I can achieve this too. It's beautiful. It's just a beautiful day.
Yeah, it really is. It really warms my spirit. And I avoided the hearings because I didn't want to see all the toxicity. And so I didn't allow myself to really get caught up in it. But now, the first time I really was able to feel it, I'm in a show at Schomburg Research Library here in New York. And Cherise May is one of the artists in the group show with me. And she's a photographer who shot pictures at the hearing of Judge Jackson. And that was the first time I started to get emotional about it. But today it just really hit home. Like, wow.
I know. It's so beautiful. I mean, I almost was going to look at the vote, but I just didn't want anything to happen. Not that I could jinx it, but I just wanted to revel in the celebration. And so I just see everyone posting all these beautiful Black women and men, just so happy, and this, as unfortunate as she has to be the first Black woman, but hopefully this it's going to open the door for many, many more down the line and in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And I'm just, again, I can't overstate it. To be sitting here with you as we hear about it, it's great. I think it's always important for me to start these conversations, not assuming that the listeners know everything about the person. So why don't you unpack for us a little bit about who you are in your own words? Who is Deborah Roberts?
A very simple person. I'm not very complicated, but I try to make my work a little complicated. I am a collage-based artist who uses different faces, found faces, to create a narrative about being Black in America, being Black in the world. As a young woman, what all the triumphs and the adversities and tragedies that happen as you go into womanhood, and how the world perceives you. So that is the basis of my work. I was a visual artist who did work similar to Norman Rockwell. One day I saw the Ron Artest fight on the news, and the next day how CNN showed it nearly 200 times, and I was thinking, I'm not doing the type of work that's being broadcast out to the world. And so I got on a journey to change that. And collage was the path that I found that best expressed my ideas about how people were viewing Black women and Black people. And so what I always tell you is there is a lot of honey in my work, and there's a lot of medicine too.
Indeed, there is. And it is powerful work. It's beautiful work, but it's powerful work. And those who with an eye who want to see can look at the surface of it and see that there's a lot going on there. I mean,
Right.
and it's impressive. I really, really congratulate you on the work and on your success. I mean, it's so powerful that people are imitating it. I hear and
Yeah.
I see. So that's a
Yeah.
little tragic, but we're going to move past and we're going to work past that. You grew up in East Austin, Texas. Tell me a little bit about what's it like growing up in East Austin, Texas? What was childhood like for you? What
Well,
formed Deborah Roberts?
I am one of 8 children. East Austin, if you know this, is a black part of town. When I was growing up, it was for black, for the middle class people who lived in communities where there was a lot of teachers. There were a lot of professional people, but not doctors and lawyers, but just kind of blue collar workers, people who moved the economy. And my father worked for the city of Austin and provided for our family. We have 4 girls and 4 boys, so I'm number 5, and I was different. Didn't want to be like my sisters. I was an artist type, and 3rd grade, I figured out that's what I wanted to do, and there was no stopping me at that point. So being in a family with the only attention you really got was you were sick, and that's when you got the mother's love. But other than that, get up and help with the household, duties. So it just gave me a great work ethic, and
Mm-hmm.
come from a family of preachers, lots of preachers.
Yeah, we talked about that. I forgot in our pre-call, we talked about that. We're both people of faith, that you come from a family of preachers. What was that like for you? You're the 5th child. You're a little artist. You're being different. You don't really get attention unless you're sick or pretend to be sick.
Yeah, pretending being sick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's it like with, all those chores, all that responsibility? And I would imagine preacher parents are probably pretty tough on their kids. Is that a fair
Right.
assessment?
Well, luckily my family wasn't preachers, but we had preachers like uncles and aunts and things like that.
Okay.
But my parents were very devoted, and when you got in trouble, we had to read the Bible. And for me, that was the first, visual candy, was because my family had a big family Bible with pictures of the Renaissance, God's hand reaching to Adam, creation, all these wonderful pieces. And that's my love for art and shape and bodies, stem from seeing those. But you couldn't just go and open our family Bible. You had to be in trouble to get that Bible, and because you had to learn Bible verses. That was my mom's punishment after she didn't spare the rod, but she made you read the Bible too. And so I got a love of that. And I think we talked about one day I was just looking at it just to see how to draw all the pictures, and I got in trouble for reading the Bible, even though I wasn't technically reading it. But it was just a wonderful way to see art, beautiful art, because we didn't have access. My father didn't believe in art in that way.
Interesting. Let's go back that a little bit. What do you mean he didn't believe in it that way? He wasn't familiar, or he just didn't see value in it?
I think he wasn't educated in the art in the way that we are today. He thought it was a hobby, and a useless hobby at that. He thought that was plain. He didn't think that was anything serious. He definitely didn't think it would be anything you could build a career on.
Yeah.
And he poked fun at it because he didn't understand it, of course. And that's how we do sometimes as Black people. I'm not going to put this all on Black people. No, that's how we do sometimes when we don't understand something. It's different than what we know. We poke fun at it, and
Absolutely.
to take the power away.
Absolutely. And it's an American thing too, in many ways. I mean, I know you lived in Paris for some time, and I spent a great deal of time traveling in Europe, and there's a much deeper appreciation of the arts as not only something to look at and to experience, but as a potential vocation than there is here. We come from this Puritan-based society, so it's like work, 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 capitalism,
Right.
capitalism. That's all that matters. So arts aren't necessarily appreciated in the way that they are in other places in the world. So your 3rd grade, you decided you wanted to be an artist. That's a pretty young age. It really kind of came out of you practicing and drawing at home and getting punished and looking at those pictures in the Bible. Is that kind of the foundation of it for you?
Right. And it was that, and it was also this idea of people wanted things drawn. When I would, draw on my paper instead of doing my homework. And people would see it and say, "Can you drive me a car?" And I was like, "Yeah, I could. Give me some paper." I do the car. So I started trading. I could do football players, race cars. That was my number one thing because boys would love that. I could do, try to draw portraits. Now looking back, they were horrible portraits, but I did them no less. I got money. I mean, I never really had currency in the sense of money, but the currency was paper and those big red pencils I love to today. Um, a lot of Red Arrow books and things like that. My family brought for a group of kids, so we never got individual tablets. My mom would buy a big stack of loose paper and give us each some paper like that. And so when I was able to trade for tablets and the big red chief tablets, so those were really
Yes,
great.
that's great. You know, when I think about your work and the foundation of it, and I just think about the world now, right, and how people are moving through it and the difficulties that we're having. I know for me, in my own worldview, I sort of work from this notion that on one level, self is this performance, this self that we build from the raw materials provided to us by pop culture, our parents, our social groups, and mass media and pop culture, right? But I also believe in a very real way that so many of the problems that we're experiencing are results of this identity crisis that as
Right,
humans that we're feeling, that we don't know who we are as authentic creation of God. We don't embrace and love ourselves. And so when you do that, you feel this emptiness, right? This void that you're trying to fill, and you try to fill it with fame and followers and material things and money. Or if that doesn't work, then you try to make yourself feel better and elevate yourself by diminishing other people, which is
right,
where all this oppressive stuff comes from. I know in your artist statement, and even now, you were talking about your early ideals of race and beauty were shaped by, what you saw in Renaissance artist paintings and the photographs and magazines. I'm so curious, like, what kind of impact did this have on your view of self as a child and even as a young woman? I mean, when you've got those ideals that you're seeing in those paintings, you're seeing those magazines. I would imagine back then, because we're around the same age, that there weren't a whole lot of Black people there.
right.
How did that really impact how you started to view yourself?
Well, you look at this idea that white people are beautiful and we're lesser than.
Mm-hmm.
You see these images being broadcast all over television and the magazine. And my mom was a housekeeper. She would bring these Vogue magazines home, Harper's Bazaar, all these things that you would see, cosmetology. So all these things would tell these were beautiful white women. And you rarely ever saw Black people in magazines until Ebony and Essence, and Jet, I mean Ebony and Jet came out, and then later on Essence. But you think this is what beauty is. I can draw white people very well because that's what I drew for the first 15 years of my life. And those were the things I thought looked good and people wanted. Although I had very beautiful examples of women who were very powerful in the church or who were very powerful in the world, but they didn't look like nothing like the people that people applauded and people put forward. And so, it just took me as an adult to understand that, you know. But as a kid, it just, you're dark skinned like I am. Um, you have very natural hair. It doesn't have anything, doesn't have a wave in it whatsoever. It grows towards God, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to figure out how to manage it. And you never see that in the magazines. And so you do feel lesser. Because you didn't have good hair, or you're not light skinned, so you don't look white, you look Black. And the only thing that they put forward at that time were National Geographic books and things like that. And,
Mm-hmm.
no one wanted to be that because it was very, you know, God, I even hate to use the word heathenist, but it wasn't anything that was looked upon. It was savagery, it wasn't even exotic in the way that we know exotic is today. So it was always something lesser. And I didn't want to be that, you
Yeah.
know. And so it shaped me to that idea until I grew up to when I was 18 and started figuring out, really that Black is beautiful in all its shapes and colors, and started moving that in my work more.
Absolutely. It's so heinous that, we're presented with that imagery and kids, young people, we were forced to try to find ourselves despite looking at all that stuff and being bombarded with that. And whether somebody says it overtly or not, that's what those images were saying to you, that you're lesser, that this is the ideal and you should aspire to this. And even when you know better, it takes a lot of work to undo that conditioning.
Well, yeah. Look at we used to cheer Tarzan on. He would a white man, swing it through the jungle, destroying black people, spearing them, having animals trample them, and we were for Tarzan and not the black people, and that's just part of being brainwashed.
Yeah, same thing. My mom, oh my goodness, my mother loves, to this day, she loves Westerns. And when I was a little kid, I'd crawl into bed with her, sit on the sofa with her and watch Westerns and cheering for John Wayne and
Yeah,
against the Indians. And now that I'm an adult and I know better, I realize I was cheering for the genocidal
right.
maniacs that were really
Absolutely.
erasing a race of people from the planet, essentially.
Right. Right.
It's really tragic, and all for the reasons of not really understanding and loving themselves, which makes it a double tragedy because they're
Right.
harming people, and then the people doing the harm, they're hurting too. They don't
Hmm.
realize it. I know many people listening to this are probably thinking, "Brother, I ain't got time for you to be worried about them," but it's the truth. Everybody is, in this pain, and the pain's being acted out in these really hideous ways. I got a question for you. It's going to sound like an odd question to many, but I think you're going to understand this question, Deborah. When did you first realize that you were Black?
I didn't know that I was black until I was in the sixth grade. I didn't know there was a difference, and I was bused to an all-white school, and that's when was first. I first experienced the idea that it was something, something that was perceived as something ugly and and horrible, and I just don't. It's so many adjectives I can use at this time. I didn't even understand it. I didn't know why people didn't like me because I was black. I mean, my parents never talked to us about this. I never knew that was going to happen. Everybody looked the same in my neighborhood. I mean, maybe with a difference of a few dollars, but that's about it. Someone got a new car in September, someone got it in February, but that was the difference. But to be sit at a table and said why the many reasons you can't sit next to this white child, and then to a point where they put you by the bathroom because
Yeah.
so I sixth grade. Hmm.
And can you remember, paint a picture for me, life before that moment
Oh, it
and
was
life after that moment?
absolutely the life before that was great. The teachers I had, were in our community. They loved us. I was looking forward to my sixth grade trip. We would always go to a wonderful place, and I was in the fifth grade. Teachers, man, they praised my art. I talked too much. That was, I got in trouble for that. But other than that, I was a great student. After the sixth grade, I skipped school a lot. I missed the bus. My parents were already gone to work, so if you miss the bus, you cannot go to school. So I missed the bus a lot. I started wearing a coat because the teacher talked about black sexuality and that we were oversexed, and my body was changing at that time. Um, I I don't know that I did art that year. I know I started back in the seventh grade when I had a Hispanic teacher, and we moved over to a school that was both black and brown. She tried to make me do all track and field. She signed me all up for the track and field. I was a chubby kid, who I was going to beat. I mean, I could beat you to McDonald's, but I couldn't beat you at the end of that rope. I couldn't climb no rope unless it was, some French fries at the top. So then I would definitely would beat you. But she would tie me up for things like that, and when I disappointed her because I just wasn't an athlete, she would, grab me up and, belittle me for that stuff.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you're supposed to be in a place where you're nurtured and you're being taught and you're being poured into, and this is what's being poured into you, this venom and this self-hate from this person who really, at the end of the day, hates herself. And that's why she's got
Right.
to do what she can to feel better by poisoning young Black minds. That's really, really tragic. You know, I'm interested in, though, when I think about it, you started as a painter and you ultimately shifted to collage as kind of the dominant technique in your work, right? I'm very curious about this role of this exploration of identity and this journey that you went on as a young girl and then to a young woman, and what role that kind of played in you understanding that maybe collage is a better way to express the things that you're feeling and that you want to explore inside. Were they related really in direct way that way?
Not so much, a little bit, but not that much. What collage does is this idea that they see one person. They don't even see the human figure, the face. They see the skin tone first, and then they greet you based on that. So it's
Right.
it's really based on what white people experiences are and how they relate to you. And when I started seeing that was the most important thing, I started, making these monstrous faces, but not too monstrous because I think that Black people are beautiful. I always start off with the most innocent face, and I build from that. And I try, just even in the studio today, doing the monstrous face just really disgusts me. And because we're not that. But if that's what someone sees you less than human, something that can be easily tossed away or enslaved
Yeah.
or votes and rights taken away from and not standing up for that, then I have to do that type of work and I have to bring it to the forefront. One of the things I will say about my work is that it's palatable, that it leads you to this dialogue without screaming and wanting to shoot someone in the face,
Mhm.
which we feel all the time. Well, I can't say for everybody, but what I feel all the time. We have the thousands cuts, the tens of thousands of cuts that we exist every day on our body. In some way, we are cut by, just in New York, just this weekend, went to a restaurant. I had my Ferragamos on. I was looking at, I was doing my thing, and I was waiting for my friend to come and join me, and they told me I had to sit outside. So when we were seated, yeah, guy next to me came in, seated after us, and I kind of looked and I was like, I'm wondering if he's gonna have a companion. And then the guy comes up later, said, "Sorry, I'm late. I missed the train or something." And I was like, there you go, another cut on my face.
Yeah.
That this white guy could go and sit down in a nice warm space, but I had to sit on a bench near the door to wait for my party till the whole party gets here. So those little cuts, the things like that we have to exist with every day. Some of them heal very easily because we're used to it. Some of them just scab over, and some never heal. And
Yeah.
I think that doing collage for me and the cutting and the line cutting, the shaping of the faces, the things like that, all talk to that thousands of cuts that we have to deal
Absolutely. That's brilliantly shared, Deborah. I
with.
mean, I've never thought about it that way, but that's absolutely the case. And
Yeah,
you never know, no matter how wonderful, how intelligent, how educated, how smart, how beautiful, how whatever we are, we're all walking with those cuts. And you never know when there's going to be
right,
one cut too many and somebody's going to
right.
get slapped.
Absolutely.
And we're not going to go there, but
Right, right,
it's real. And I think that's why so many Black people, although we may not encourage or like the violence, embraced it because we understood where it came from. You know what? That
right,
was just the one. And quite often it's easier to take it out on each other than it is the other because
right.
we know there's probably less likely we're going to have consequences for
Retribution.
taking
Yeah,
it
yeah.
out on the retribution on each other.
Right.
It's really tragic on so many levels, and you focus on children in your work a lot, which I think is profound and very powerful. And even recently you added Black boys to your
Right.
work because it was exclusively girls for a while. Why boys? Why now? And in general, why children?
Well, it's so important that the adultification of young Black children is so prevalent that the things that they do to Black children is that they can make life decisions, that they have a historical history to gain from, to lean into. They don't. They're children. They're naive. They don't know, understand. They're scared. But people treat them as an adult, and that they're capable of having adult conversations. And when I started my work back in 2011, Nobody was talking about kids. We talked about women and idea of women and black women and how we get there. But what about being a child and having a name that is not considered, it's considered a black sounding name?
Yeah.
How do you enter when people make fun of that and teachers and other people? How do you, if you're different, if you're fat, if you're skinny, if you're dark, you're light, if you don't fit in into this mold of Western ideal of beauty, how do you move forward? And so I started to do my scholarship based on that. And it was so very important because the glove to fight yourself as a human being for black girls, like, come on, by age 8, you're already, you're already fighting who you are. You can't talk loud because now you're destructive. You can't, you can't wear certain clothes or you're over sexualized. You can't, do anything that normal little girls do without a negative stereotype being plastered on your body. And and I wanted to bring light to that. And with little boys are destroyed by the third grade.
Yeah.
If you're a little boy and you're trying to figure out who you are, you're testing the boundaries and the limits of society, and you maybe had a bad day, and if you pout or you don't want to do something, then you consider a problem child. You need to go, and this is what they do, they put them in special ed when they're not special ed students. That goes with you the rest of your time in school. And then when you talk down to and things like that, well, yeah, because the thing is, and that we all have to recognize, is that anger, it is at the surface. It just, we carry that with us. That's why it's so easy to access. I
Yeah.
mean, we don't want to. I know I don't, but I can get there, and I can get there quick.
Mm.
And I have to, and I will defend people based on, if you're mistreating a child, I'm right there. So I understand it, but we need better teachers who understand this and not label kids, already destroy them in the third grade. It's just ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And what you talked about is so insidious and unfortunately all too common. And that's why I think, first of all, I think we need national therapy because
Oh, we
everybody's
do.
in need of
We
therapy.
do.
Everybody needs to unpack how they feel about themselves and
Right.
why. So they don't take that baggage that they're carrying about their lack of love for self and place that onto the bodies of little black kids or grown black women or grown black men or anybody else other than themselves. Work that stuff out in your own time. Work that stuff out in your own mind, your own spirit, your own home. And and do that, and let's build a world that we all want to inhabit and live
Exactly.
in, and not
Absolutely.
push our pain off on others. The issue of agency too is really important in your work, and I don't want to assume that everybody understands the use of the word in this setting. So if you could just unpack for listeners what it is and why it's so important to you and in your work, because it's a really important ingredient in your work.
Right. Well, Kurt Schwitter was a German artist who used collage and cartooning as a way to gain power and agency in the world. He wanted his voice and the voice of his people to resonate in the world and to be there. The reason why doing little black girls and with power stances, it stands up. It's like we standing in the cracks of society already, and how we can move out of that into the light, whether it's talking about our beauty, whether it's talking about our bodies, and gaining agency through doing collage is very important. So it's a time honored tradition, and it's not always been positive. When you look back at the stereotypical imagery of the pickaninny or the Uncle Ben and the Aunt Your Mama, those were symbols and tropes set aside to humiliate black people, to put them in their place, and to take some of that stuff and shake it off and clean it up and put it into my work as a power symbol, an act of power, of acting moving forward. You have to see me because I'm staring you in the face. That was a time black people couldn't look white people in the face.
Yeah.
And these kids are directly staring you in the face. They're asking for you to see their humanity. That gives them agency. That gives them life. And so that's why it's so important.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I just wanted to hear you speak to it in your own words, because I see it in the work. I saw it in the work. And obviously, as I did the research, I started to understand that you were very deliberate and intentional about it, which is amazing. And, othering, which you talked about and referred to other, and we all are all familiar with it. And we all engage in it, by the way, because when we talk about them, we're othering them.
Right.
We're othering from a defensive space, but at the end of the day, we're still doing it too. And it's destructive for all of us. And, having people infringe upon your agency and othering you is a violent in many ways and very much a traumatic event. And so everybody's walking around wounded. That's one of the things
Right.
that I think is so central, is that everyone's wounded. But art like yours speaks to it. It calls it to the surface. It makes people at least explore and examine it. And hopefully it starts to lead on some level to healing. And I think artists have potentially have a role in that and have the ability to do that. But then sometimes I wonder if that's putting too much pressure on art and artists to do that. Where do you net out on that? What's your feeling about artists and our ability to, help people heal, or to at least call the attention to the fact that we need to heal and we need to grow?
Right. But we have to watch and see and make sure that people are not um, enjoying that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
This a whole bunch of trauma that we're trying to bring out of our body into the world, just get it out of us, and people are eating it up, and we have to wonder. Um, I can't remember. It must have been Dave Chappelle who talked about. He was saying a lot of black jokes, and then he realized that the people were laughing too hard. They wasn't laughing at it. It was a difference in the way that that laughter was now coming, and that's why I feel sometimes with black art right now, the laughter is different. It's
Mm-hmm.
that this consumption of this tragedy and what we're trying to feel, and then you try to hold it back. I try to cloak it a little bit in my work. I don't want to put it all out. You would never see any of the children in my work crying. I'm not going to give you that. You don't
Yeah.
deserve that. But what you do deserve is to understand my pain, and how you can make it better. And
Yeah.
so it's important, as artists to, give a little, give enough, but not all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, not all of it. You're right about that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And then also, I think, we want people to see our pain a little bit and understand that they're in some ways root cause of it. But also, I think what's really important is so many of us exist in this illusion of separateness, right? That
Right.
it's us, that it's them, that it's your pain, that I'm the victim and you're the perpetrator. And those things are true on some level. But what people don't understand, at least from where I sit, is that we're all connected, right? And when
Right.
you're harming us, when you're taking my agency, you're actually doing damage to yourself in the
Right.
process. You
Right.
can't create a world where you're telling me that I'm nothing unless I have these things. Keep from me the ability to earn a living to make those things that you told me I'm nothing without, and then feel safe in your home. Where do you
Right.
think crime's going to come from? When you
Exactly.
set this up, this is
Right.
your system, this is your process, this is your
Right.
way of thinking, being, and doing. I'm just playing my role in it. You just didn't think through the fact that you're connected to this, and it all comes back to bite you as well. And I think one of the most insidious ways it does it, Deborah, is when you're oppressed, or you're focused on the fear of the people that you've oppressed lashing out at you. Who has time to dream?
Right. Right.
And
True.
dreaming is an important part of living. Dreaming is an important part of making change.
Hmm.
And, everything that exists, you look around that room you're in right now, the room I'm in, nothing exists here that wasn't a dream, wasn't a thought in
Right.
somebody's mind first. But if you're
Right.
robbing people of the time and the space to dream, then you're robbing them and yourselves of the potential fruit of their dreams. That little
Absolutely.
black kid that you're torturing might be the one that cures cancer.
Right.
Um, it's insidious. And how important has dreaming been for you in your life and in your work and in your process today, even just as existing as a black woman? How
Hmm.
important is dreaming to you?
Dreaming is very important. I tell people, I'm here. This is the house that art built. I only dreamed about it. I was so afraid that I would end up homeless. That was my biggest fear. But I would get that little year-end announcement from, I guess it's the IRS or someone that says, "This is how much you will make when you're a senior citizen." Mine was $250. I was like, man, I'm gonna have to work till I just one day. It's the last day, robot kill me, and that would be it. I this wouldn't be possible without my dreams, the dreams of a third grader. The idea of having an amazing teacher in high school for a whole 4 years that pushed me, that loved me, that showed me the way, that showed me that I had to learn how to not only do painting but cartooning, airbrushing, watercolor. She taught me everything, a full package. She wanted me to be a full pack. I had to do calligraphy. I had to learn everything, things that I didn't want to do. And now I see them as part of my practice. And, just to tell in on that conversation you said before is that, and James Baldwin said this, white people taught to civilize black people when they wasn't civilized themselves. And that feeds into this whole idea we talking about taking the life from someone. You literally take the life from someone, alter their life based on your perceived notions of who you think they are, and take away their dreams. But you hope that kids, that dream is so embedded in their spirit that it's God given, that it's going to nurture itself way out of that. As their body, as they mature, but it doesn't always happen, and it depends on when people take your life,
Yeah.
and that's why we have to protect it so often.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do you offer? I mean, we all have challenges. We've all had periods where it's difficult to dream, or we may have not believed in ourselves. I mean, for you, so much of the success has come later in your career. Were there ever times that it was difficult for you to dream, to imagine that this was going to come true, or were you fully committed to the whole time, and you're just that special person that didn't have to, go through that? And if so,
No,
okay. I thought not, because I don't think anybody is. But you know,
no.
what's your advice to people that worked for you and pushing through those moments, right?
One of
Holding on to that dream.
one of the things when I had really down times when the second George Bush became president, I really had to. Every day I did a journal, a really positive quote, and until I started feeling good and didn't have to do that. Then I get up in the morning. I said, "This is a day that God has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." And that helped a lot. And also, I had go girl goals. I had the ultimate goal of being collected at the Museum of Modern Art, but I had smaller goals to help me get there. So when I achieved those goals, because some people have lofty goals, they're so high, and you're tossing into a river with sand, and you cannot reach that. But if you start building little sand blocks, building and building and building, it helps. So one of the things when I achieve something, I said, "You go, girl, you go. Look at you." And then when I go two times above what I thought I was going to do, I was getting happy. I would put on "I Will Survive." I had music, different types of things that just kept me motivated and going, because it was some very lean times. And at one point, especially when I changed to work, that's what made me go back to school to get a little bit more. That's when I realized the missing ingredient to the pie. You can make apple pie all day, but you forget the most important thing. It's never going to taste right. It's always going to be something different about it. And I found that ingredient, and it was great.
Well, we are grateful for it. On dreams, I got this, and I got to give credit. Dr. Sean Jenwright, I got this from. But on dreams, I want to ask you a question. He poses this question to some of the students. I think it's brilliant. If you had a magic napkin and three things you could write on that magic napkin and they would come true in 10 years, what would they be, Deborah?
Now,
Mm-hmm.
oh, wow. I mean, only reason it's hard for me to say that is because all the things that I prayed for, I received, and in
Yes.
ways that was been so abundant. If I had to write on the napkin in 10 years, I would want good health, good memory, good body health, you know, all of that, mental, everything. Um, Second thing is um, that, my family was safe, that, everybody are still here, the ones that we would hope to be here. It's so weird because it's so hard. I mean, when 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 God just delivers you, smiles on you, it's really hard to say I want anything more than that.
Yeah.
I think if you would have asked me this even 5 or 6 years ago, the list probably would have been 23 instead of three. But He heard me, and I'm a witness of that. I mean, my whole life is a witness of that. So I don't have a third thing. I, no.
I mean, that's the most beautiful answer I've received so far. I mean, it really is. I'm not gassing you. I mean, that's the truth. The fact that you are so blessed and so aware and so grateful for the blessings that you can't even think of three things that you would wish for. I mean, that in and of itself is a blessing, not only to you, but to everybody who's going to hear this, because people know that dreams can and do and will come true.
In
And
God's
that
time.
gratitude in God's time, and that gratitude is what fuels that process and what makes the process sweeter at the end. I mean, it's beautiful. Speaking of which, I mean, do you recall the emotion you felt the first time you sold a piece of art?
The very first time, uh, the very first time I remember it was for $5, and I was so happy. I was happy. I had to been no, excuse me, $25. I had to have been 17 years old. The guy at the bank wanted to buy. My mom worked at the bank as a housekeeper, a cleaner, and the guy wanted to buy one of my works. He told me he was supporting me. He gave me $25. That was the best $25 I ever had. I still remember it. And God, I brought junk food, I think, but it was so great. I mean, it was wonderful. I think I brought some headphones. I can't remember. It was like real money, and I kind of knew I could do this. I had no idea, no example, but I just knew this is what was for me, and I got money for it. So it was great.
That's beautiful. Would you consider yourself a hopeful person, Deborah? And if
Oh
so, where
yes,
does that
most
hope?
definitely.
Where does that hope come from? Is that your faith, or where does that come from?
I think I think partly faith, part my mom. My mom wasn't perfect, of course. No one is, but when she died, we all felt good. I mean, good in this. I mean, good in the sense that we know she went to heaven. Like there are some people you like. I don't know. Maybe they just a little shaky. It could go this way, it could go that way. We knew it. We knew it because of her spirit and her. So I get that hope from her. Also, I entered the world with that type of hope. I also entered the world with my father's anger, and they are always at battle. And so I think that comes from them, and that comes from the early, relationship with God, that we all have to be saved. We all have to profess our love and for Christ very early. We didn't cuss. I didn't start cussing, using cuss words till I was 25. Now I can really use them. Uh,
I was kind of hoping I'd get a couple during this
yeah, I
conversation.
thought I was gonna drop a few, but try to be good. Try to be good.
You have to be anything other than who you are. I love, and I admit that I'm late to the party, but I love the late Bell Hooks. And in her book, All About Love, she shares this definition of love from M. Scott Peck's The Road Less Traveled,
Uh-huh.
which also echoes the work of this philosopher and psychologist Eric Fromm. And it defines love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. It
Right.
continues that love is, as love does, love is both an intention and an action. And
Mm-hmm.
so my question to you is, do you buy into that definition of love? And if so, do you feel like you've experienced that kind of love in your life and that you are able to give that kind of love to others, whether it's personally or through your work? Or how do you react to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. All of it. I'm all in for that because I do. I think I am right now living the blessings that my grandma prayed for me, pray for our family, pray for the strength of our family. I feel like is an intentional love. I don't think sometimes when I'm most distressed. I call a friend who is really God fearing. And like God, I'm a prayer of a righteous man availeth much. I said, well, maybe I'm not righteous enough, and I assume that this person is. When God said, "To come in my name, I am present," so I need Him here, because I'm about to, go crazy. I think it is intentional. I think that there are things that you can do to further that love. I, I you know, I don't know. This is very hard for me because there's a constant battle between trying to be a good person and also not let that goodness become a weakness, So you have to kind of balance in it. So I'm still, no matter what, is going to reach out to the world with an open hand. I'm going to do that, not a
Yeah.
closed fist. And hopefully, when I pull it back in, I'll have most of my fingers. Uh, I don't know that I will. Might just be a knob, a little knob there. But I'm still going to do that, because I do think it's intentional.
No, it really is. And none of us leave this place unscathed. So you might
Right,
as well get
absolutely.
a wound or two trying to make a difference as opposed to just sitting here.
Right.
Yeah, so many of us who have gone through so much pain and are on the wrong side of oppression find it difficult to listen to Martin Luther King or Jesus for that matter and talk about loving your enemy as, and loving your neighbor and such. But if you buy in on any level to, things I shared earlier, that, there's this identity crisis going on and share that definition of what love is, then you start to get your arms around the fact that if people are harming you and setting up these systems because they don't love themselves, they don't understand who they are as a creation of the God, that they don't understand their space and our place in this universe. And that's where the darkness comes from. And you subscribe to the definition of love that I just shared, that it is extending yourself for the purpose of nurturing your own and another's spiritual growth. Well, if you're nurturing their spiritual growth and they start to get a clue about who they are, it removes the temptation and the need for them to be the things that they've been being that have been harming you. And if you can do that work on yourself simultaneously, every little conversation can help to change the world just a little bit. Every collage, every conversation like this, we just do our part. All you do is tend to the garden that you've been, assigned to tend. Do the work there. And you'll make the difference that you're supposed to make by being who you're supposed to be. And I just wanted to share that because I think that that's what you've been. You've been and you continue to be a light. You're doing the work. You're tending to the garden that you've been, assigned to tend. You being who you were created to be, using your gifts to share with and to serve us. And we really, I appreciate it. And I want to speak for a bunch of other people I know who really love you and your work and feel the same way. What is next for you? Where can people find you online? What's the next exhibit? What's coming next?
What's coming next? Two things. I'm getting ready for my show in London at Stephen Freeman Gallery that opens June 8th. Did a wonderful article with our friend at Essence, and that's coming out May, June issue. And I'm just, I'm out here. I get to take, after this work goes off to London, I get to take the rest of the year off. And that's wonderful. I'll make it to June, 6 months on, 6 months off. I have a show in fall at the McNay with Benny Andrews Estate. So me and Benny is going to be in a conversation called True Believers. So for right now, I'm just one foot in front of the other.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that 6 months on, 6 months off, because, that's time you get to play. And I think
Right.
people also forget the role of play in doing good work. You got to take some time and you got to play. You got to feed your soul. You got to relax your body and your mind. You got to play. And great ideas come from playing.
That's right. Just be still. Just be still.
Just
And
be still.
not thinking. It just all floods in. Believe me, I know that. I tell people all the time, I took a boat to Alaska to figure out, what I want to do next. And, it was 7 days too long. But at the end of it, ideas came. And it was great. But Alaska, I'm going to Cabo this time. See how it works out.
Alaska sounds beautiful and probably sounds like a good idea on paper, but yeah, I can imagine that's a shorter rather than longer trip.
Yeah.
Well, Deborah Roberts, I am so grateful that you joined me today, and I'm grateful again for your work, and thank you so much. Where can people find you online? Because I know people want to see your work. Well, hopefully not to steal it, but people want to see you online and follow you. Where can they find you at?
Well, I'm on Instagram, rdeborah191. I have a website, deborahrobertsart.com. Just Google me. Something's gonna pop up. Just you can find me that way. Currently have a new catalog that's floating around here, several different locations you can purchase. I'm just gonna continue to do my thing and reach out if I can help. I will.
Well, amazing sister, amazing artist, amazing human being, and I love the work, and I got to get one of those catalogs, so tell me where I can buy one, because I definitely want to get one. And by the way, you guys, I'm going to put her links in the show notes, and her name is spelled Deborah, Deborah Roberts. Deborah Roberts, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate everything. This is a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. I enjoyed it as well.
All right, you be safe.
All right, I will. Thank you.
Bye-bye.